It is pumpkin pie season. I'm gonna show you again how to make pumpkin pie. And you can make pumpkin pie from a small sweet pumpkin like this, or you can make it using the canned pumpkin puree. I'm also going to be using these pre-made and frozen pie crusts. Let's get going. What you're going to need, if you want 2 pumpkin pies, you should probably get 1 sweet pumpkin. Otherwise, you should use 1 15-ounce can of pumpkin puree. This recipe is adapted from Sally's Baking Kitchen, and so everything on here I'm doubling so that I can make the most use of this sweet pumpkin. So let me read off your ingredients for you, okay? So what you're going to need is 1 sweet pumpkin for 2 pumpkin pies, or 1 15-ounce can of pumpkin puree, 425 grams, 3 large eggs, 1 1/4 cup or 250 grams of packed light or dark brown sugar, 1 tablespoon of cornstarch or 8 grams, 1/2 teaspoon of salt, 1 1/2 teaspoons of ground cinnamon, 1/2 teaspoon of ground ginger, 1/4 teaspoon of ground or freshly grated nutmeg. Ain't nobody grating their own nutmeg here. 1/8 teaspoon of ground cloves, 1/8 teaspoon of fresh ground black pepper, 1 cup of heavy cream, and 1/4 cup of milk. I'm going to double everything in this recipe to get the most use of this. So, first things first, I have my oven preheating to 350, and I have about 2.5 to 3 cups of water in this 9x13 baking dish. This is what I'm going to use to help soften the pumpkin. So once I cut it in half here, I've already rinsed it off. So I had to grab a different knife. Let's get this thing cut in half, all right? So let's go ahead and cut it right down, cut the stem right off, and make sure that you're using a sharp knife. A sharp knife is a safe knife, okay? So this is not really that sweet. I was expecting something different. So you're gonna cut it right in half. And you see all those stringy seeds in there? At this point, you're gonna go ahead and scoop those stringy bits and those seeds out. One time my dad was making pumpkin pie. I don't think that he had the best recipe for it. And so what he did was he took one of those really large decorative pumpkins, and you can make pumpkin pie out of those, you can. It's just gonna make probably like 6 pumpkin pies. That's why you probably wanna get the smaller ones, and the smaller ones are also sweeter. But anyway, he took one of those big decorative pumpkin pies and he scooped all the guts out like I'm doing now, and he actually seasoned those with all the seasonings you need, and he put those in a pie crust. He thought that that was pumpkin pie. And for the longest time, I thought that was pumpkin pie too. I couldn't understand how other people were getting their fillings so smooth. But then I realized all the insides you actually throw away and you keep the flesh, all right? So after you've gotten just the sinewy seeds and guts scooped out, you're gonna place it face down in your pan full of water. I'm personally gonna throw away these goopy seeds. I'm not making roasted seeds anytime soon. I feel like anytime I did make pumpkin seeds, they were only good for like 4 or 5 of them. And then I was like, I don't want it anymore. I feel like I end up spitting out a lot. Whoever invented roasted pumpkin seeds, that had to be a struggle meal. That had to be a Great Depression meal. You know, like the people out there who are making water pie, listen, I'm not gonna knock it. Well, I'm gonna knock it. I haven't tried it, but I'm fully knocking it right now. I bet it tastes bland and like nothing. But listen, that's all they had back then. You know, the Dust Bowl came over, all you had was... All right, so now we have these things gutted and cut in half. We're gonna put it in the oven at 350 degrees for about 45 to 50 minutes, or until the skin is soft or easily puncturable with a fork. So while the pumpkin is in the oven softening, let's go ahead and see if we can get our fillings ready to go. Again, I'm doubling everything in this recipe, so if you hear me mention 3 eggs and I put in 6, that is the reason why. So first, let's start with our 3 eggs. And just as an aside, after I'm done making this filling, I'm going to put it in the refrigerator until the pumpkin is done softening. I always see these people on TV who can crack an egg with one hand. It's not me. I've not learned how to do that. And personally, I think it's a little bit of fear because I hate cleaning up spilled egg. Oh, that bothers me so much. Anyway, if you get a shell in there like I did, go ahead and remove it. Go ahead and whisk these up. Continuing on, we're gonna go ahead and add 1 1/4 cup of brown sugar. And this is supposed to be packed. So when I have it out here and it's all scooped up, I'm going to pack it down with a spoon and fill as much as I can in there. Now go ahead and whisk in your brown sugar as well. All right, so now let's go ahead and start with our spices. Now it's important to mention that cinnamon, nutmeg, and cloves are all in a spice called allspice. I have them individually here because sometimes I'll have a recipe that calls for cinnamon, that doesn't call for cloves, or that calls for cloves, that doesn't call for nutmeg. So keep that in mind. You can also get pumpkin pie spice. It makes life a lot easier. So just keep that in mind as well. So we're just going to go ahead and start with our 1 tablespoon of cornstarch, 1/2 teaspoon of salt, 1 1/2 teaspoon of ground cinnamon, 1/2 teaspoon of ground ginger, 1/4 teaspoon of freshly grated nutmeg. I'm not grating my own nutmeg, so this is gonna have to do. 1/8 of a teaspoon of ground clove, and 1/8 teaspoon of freshly ground black pepper. Let's go ahead and whisk these bad boys in. Now add 1 cup of heavy whipping cream. Add 1/4 of a cup of milk. Now we're gonna whisk this all up, set it aside, and then get ready for our pumpkin to come out of the oven. So our pumpkin is all complete. It took me about 1 hour and 10 minutes to fully soften, and it's still a little warm, so be careful when you're scooping out some of the flesh in there. But we're gonna scoop it out, put a little tiny bit of our mixture in our little blender, just so it blends a little bit more smoothly. And then we're going to combine everything together, put it in our pie crust, and bake it. So let's get scooping. Now when all you've got are just the skins left, you can discard these and start blending away. Like I said, I'm going to add a little bit of this batter here to this mix. It'll help to cool it off a little bit. If you blend hot things, it has a tendency to seep out and kind of make a mess. So it'll cool it off, but also help it to blend a little bit more smoothly as well. Now we're going to quickly combine our ingredients here and grab our pre-made pie crust. You can use any pre-made pie crust, or you can make your own pie crust. It doesn't really matter. So we've got our blended pumpkin pulp and flesh. We're going to go ahead and add this to our batter here. Pour these evenly into these pie crusts and bake at 325 degrees for about 50 to 60 minutes, or until your pie is set. If only I could open this. Look at how that pureed so well. Now again, you can do all of this, or you can just get a can of pumpkin puree. Give it a gentle mix and an even pour. Let's go ahead and transfer these to the oven. All right, you guys, so we are all done. The pie stayed in for about an hour, I would say, at a low temperature, pretty low. I'm gonna let these guys cool just a little bit more. And we've got our experimental bread with the crumble on top. I think it turned out good. We'll do a taste test later. But overall, I maybe would have added a little more flour to the bread. Maybe added a little more batter in general, so it was a little more hefty. But outside of that, I'm ready to dig in. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you later.